The recent surge in the strength of the Naira reflects a promising trend in Nigeria's economic landscape, coinciding with the federal government's renewed emphasis on promoting locally manufactured goods through its Made in Nigeria campaign. With the federal government's spotlight on promoting made in Nigerian goods, there is a tangible sense of drive around the country's capacity to compete globally with its locally made goods. Meanwhile, the exchange rate between the Naira and the dollar closed at 1,300 to a dollar yesterday, Wednesday, on the official window. Well, let's get talking. I'm being joined by a renowned economist, former chief economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Dr. Andrew Nevin. He joins me from Dallas, United States of America. Thank you, Dr. Nevin. It's good to see you as usual.
Brother Tolo, it's always wonderful to see you. Great to be here.
Oh, well, let me start. I know you're following trends and what is happening back here in Nigeria. What is your assessment of some of the policy moves by the Bola Tinubu-led administration, particularly the major steps, those steps he took, revamping the oil and gas industry, addressing the dollar issue, and of course, the removal of fuel subsidy? What do you think about that transition period of the challenges and where we start to see inflation and other variables, following tune with the policies instituted?
Well, I think at the time when I was still in Nigeria, I had always been in favor of the liberalization of the exchange rate and always been in favor of the removal of the fuel subsidy. It was no longer sustainable. I think these things have not been followed up. I've been very clear in the last year. Two economic policies that are really critical. One is NNPC and get oil production back up, and that has not happened. The second is security. There's no economic success without increased security. And of course, I don't have any counsel on security. I'm not an expert, but the expectation was a year into this that we would have seen more progress on the security front, and we haven't seen any progress on the oil production front. So very disappointing from that perspective. And then we continue. If you remember at PwC, we wrote the paper about dead assets probably 6 or 7 years ago. People said, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. We haven't seen assets come to life in Nigeria, at least as far as I can tell, and I follow it quite closely. So the Ajakuta Steel, the railroads, the refineries. I was told that refineries would be producing, the state-owned refineries would be producing by December. I haven't seen that yet. So overall, I think it started with promise. I was very hopeful in June of last year, but I'm pretty disappointed right now, quite frankly.
Yes, because everyone expected that by this time, Dangote refinery should have started churning out products, and the Port Harcourt refinery too, according to the NNPC, should get on stream. But if this happens, Dr. Nevin, what impact would it have on the price of petroleum products? There's been an argument that it might not just drop the price significantly.
No, I don't think the refineries drop the price significantly. What drops the price significantly is we have a better exchange rate. And, the governor of the central bank has said it should be about 800 to 900. I think that's probably the target number. It's come in from, 1,800 to 1,300 now on the official exchange, which is good news. But what's driving the exchange rate largely is we don't have dollars, and we don't have dollars, in my view, because we don't produce the oil. Oil is $80 a barrel. We should be swimming in dollars, but we're not producing it. So one question I have is, we have this announcement of the 3 new economic coordinating committees. I think that is a terrible idea. I can talk a bit more about it if we have time. But why are we creating 3 new coordinating committees and we're not having an audit of the NNPC? So one of the first actions of His Excellency President Tinubu was to have an audit at the CBN, to change the governance of the CBN. The CBN has really come on a good path. People are very happy with it, very professionally managed. NNPC, as I said, is the biggest reason we have the 1,800 or 1,500 or now 1,300 Naira exchange rate, and yet there's been no talk, as far as I've seen, about an audit. There's been no changes there. So if we continue the same policies and the same people that got us oil production at 1.0, 1.2 million barrels, maybe 1.3 now, but not 1.8 or 2 million that we're aiming for, I'm not sure. Any other policy cannot compensate for what's happening in the oil sector, which remains our biggest exporter.
Let's stay with that before we move to talking about patronizing made in Nigerian products, which we know that would help revamp our currency. You talked about the NNPC, and many talk about activities of the nation's oil company. But we also know that in talking about privatization or liberalizing the oil market, we've seen that the PIA has taken effect. And the NNPC now becomes a limited liability company that has to make profit for Nigerians. They reeled out their figures sometime, at least for the first time, auditing their accounts and all of that. What more do you expect from this company with regards to transparency, accountability, since it's now a company that should make profit and be accountable for the 200 million Nigerians?
Well, I think that's a first good step. But I'd like to answer the question: why is oil production not rising? I mean, it was a flagship policy of the government. I mean, what I just talked about from an economic perspective, everyone understands the impact of if we got oil from 1.3 to 1.8 million. The Naira would come into 800 or 900 immediately on that. And of course, the governor or the NPC just raised the interest rates to 24%, partially to stabilize the Naira. But I mean, if we had the dollar inflow, we wouldn't be necessarily having to go to these sky-high interest rates. Inflation would come down because a lot of it's imported. So it's just, to me, a fundamental question. I mean, we've made this change to the PIA, but it's still 100% owned by the government. It's not clear to me that we have the transparency about it. I don't think Nigerians have an answer to why oil production is not rising. We've talked about the oil crude theft over the years. There seems to be very little progress on that. And as I said, I think that should be deeply disappointing to Nigerians. Now, if we have a partial privatization of the NNPC, so now the stock exchange and the SEC are involved in regulating it, I think that would be a further good step. But, that's still years down the road. But before that time, I think, as I said, I think an audit of the NNPC and answering Nigerians' questions of what's been happening to the flow of funds, and it continues to be very opaque, despite the fact that it's an LLC at this point in time. I think Nigerians deserve that. And as I said, I was very surprised that it in fact wasn't done, because it was done immediately with the CBN, but not with the NNPC. And those are the two most important economic institutions in the nation.
Well, back to the CBN and what Dr. Cardoso has been doing in recent times. According to the central bank, all backlogs of FX have been cleared. And that seems to be good news for investors. I don't know, how do you see that boosting investors' confidence? Because there's something about bringing in money and being able to take your money back to your country. What do you make of all of these moves by the CBN? Do you think it will clearly attract the needed investment at this time? That confidence, do we have it in Nigeria's economy?
Well, the old system where you put money into the country and you might or might not get it back when you want because it's at the whim of the CBN clearly didn't work and broke down. And, as we've talked about many times, it was basically a system for corruption because some people got dollars, other people didn't get dollars. The way that was done is completely opaque. At least under the system now, a foreign investor, it's not the CBN's problem to give you your money back. It's the market's problem. So right now you have a system where you can come and invest in Nigeria. If you come in and invest at 1,300, in fact, you bring your dollars in at 1,300 and then it goes to 900 from better economic management, you're going to make a windfall the other way and exchange gain on that. So this is the only system that can work. What we can't go back to is a system where the CBN promises to give you the dollars. So clearing the backlog, which is where the CBN is promising to give private sector actors dollars, is really critical. It's very important now the CBN is not promised. It's not their dollars. And as I said, because oil production is so low, there aren't many dollars in the system. So the only mechanism that really will work for deciding who gets the dollars is the market mechanism. And the foreign investors understand that. And now they're weighing off. They can look at this right now. So we have 24.75% NPC interest rate. We have the Naira possibly going from 1,300 and getting better on that. So a foreign investor weighing that off in terms of portfolio investment, I mean, they can make that decision. And I think some will make that decision to say, actually, I think that there's a good chance that the Naira rate's going to decline, the Naira is going to strengthen, so that I can not only get 24%, I get a bump up in the Naira, and I can go in or out because there's a market to do it. So I think there's some reasonable chance that these policies really help the economy. But fundamentally, portfolio flow is not enough for the economy. I mean, we need the foreign direct investment. More importantly, we need to sell things. We need to export things. And I said the quickest thing. There are two major things, and I always pointed them out. One was oil and one was brains. Those are the barbell economy that we have. the brains, we will continue to export through the diaspora, we'll continue to export through the outsourcing strategy. The Vice President announced it, I think, about 2 weeks ago. His Excellency Shatima, fantastic policy. But that's a slow build. The quicker build is, where we used to export 2 million barrels a day and get enough dollars on, get that number back up. So I keep coming back to the NNPC and the disappointment in the lack of transparency about what's happening with that.
Great stuff. Now, promoting made in Nigeria goods is something that has also been in the front burner for some time. I have attended functions with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, home and abroad, trying to preach the use of made in Nigerian goods, and also the opening of some warehouses across the world. I was in Nairobi with them, in South Africa. But my question really to you will be, what do you make of the efforts, deliberate efforts aimed at promoting made in Nigeria goods? Of course, if we reduce our dependence on foreign goods, we'll save our Naira. How does this come to you?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely, we should have a focus on producing in Nigerian goods. And, I think obviously when the Naira is so weak, people want to produce as much value added in Nigeria on that. But again, I mean, the market forces are in the direction of producing more in Nigeria. It's a big market, but we've seen manufacturing decline. We've seen a lot of, and so of course there's two parts to it. I mean, one part, as you said, is us trying to export things, particularly around agricultural commodities, building the warehouses, the inspection, meeting the international standards. And I think there's a lot of efforts there, and I think that they're bearing some fruit. The other one, of course, is import substitution, where we manufacture things, say fast-moving consumer goods, things like beer, which I drank a lot of Heineken when I was in the country, which was made locally. But that's been on the decline because of the general economic problems, because of the Naira. People have had a hard time importing. So you may produce the goods in Nigeria, but you still have to import some things to do that, particularly the machinery, the replacement parts for the machinery, some technical expertise. So again, the Naira is causing problems with manufacturing, but absolutely, and I think the government itself should be committed to buying Nigerian where possible. I mean, we're all aware, of course, what happens with the vehicles where there's domestic players, Innocent, for example, and yet the government chooses to purchase Prado. So they have to lead by example in doing that. I also think, for example, there's a lot of homegrown talent in the IT area. So in terms of this software development, e-government, the people they should be using to do that are the local companies where they can, which I think is in a lot of cases.
Let's talk about packaging and standard. That has been the challenge Nigeria has faced. Well, my suit is made here in Nigeria, so it's not a foreign suit. But I'm just trying to let you know that one thing that makes Nigerians opt for foreign goods is the packaging and standards and quality. Are we trying to meet up? Are we getting there? If you look at some of our products,
well, I mean, hey, look, this is all a journey, and people know, have listened to me over the years. I mean, one reason I love Nigeria is the pace of change. So, we criticize ourselves because we're not doing a certain thing, but the reality is that, since I came in 2008 till today, on every dimension, there's been incredible progress. But you think about packaging. I mean, look at the way Nigeria is packaging in Nollywood and music. And music is dominating around the world, and the way it's packaged up on that. So I don't have any doubts about the underlying capacities of Nigeria to package anything. Fashion is incredible. Again, it kind of world leading on that. So I mean, to get to the stage where some of the packaging and marketing in consumer goods is also world standard, I don't think that's an issue at all, quite frankly. I mean, Nigeria to me is actually doing very well on a global stage. I mean, just a little segue, people come to me and say, well, Bangladesh has done very well versus Nigeria. And on some of the numbers and the IMF and the World Bank, that's absolutely true. And we all understand the challenges. The difference with Nigeria, 200 million people versus Indonesia versus Brazil versus Bangladesh, other countries of around 200 million, is Nigeria has the top end. I mean, it is world-class in sports. I mean, I'm watching a lot of NBA basketball now. Every time you turn around, in the college basketball, every time you turn around, you see the Nigerians penetrating in that. It's on the music. It's on the Nollywood. The fact that it has, and of course, it has so many professionals working in the diaspora at very high levels, very good, top-end people in Nigeria. And it's that top end that really gives me confidence they can dominate. So I don't have any doubt. I'm not worried about the ability of Nigerians to produce consumer goods packaged or marketed in a way that's consistent with world-class standards. Right now, Nigerians are world-class in many, many dimensions of the world.
That sounds very good. So in all of this, back to the policy instituted by government, like I asked when we started this conversation, where do you think that we'll start to see a relief? Some of this impact, of course, of this policies by government.
Well, I mean, again, I have to say I was very disappointed. I mean, we were preparing for this interview, and I wake up and I find out His Excellency President Tinubu has constituted 3 new committees for economic coordination, and I really think this is an error, a mistake, going backwards. I mean, we've had so much experience with these coordinating committees, and quite frankly, the way a market economy should work is, you don't need coordination. The market coordinates largely on that, and we spend so much time coordinating. And as I said, the fundamental issue to me is, the dollar because of the oil production. So we refused to audit NNPC, but we constituted 3 new committees. I mean, we have a number of governors on the committee. I mean, the governors have states to run. They have security issues, they have education issues, they have healthcare policy issues. They're being asked to answer questions that the government should already have mechanisms to do. But the existing architecture between the Ministry of Finance, the CBN, it already exists. So now to create another layer of things, and especially after saying you're going to implement the Orange-Shea report, to me just strikes me as not addressing the fundamental issues. So why strike more coordinating committees when we haven't been able to produce the steel from Ajaokuta? We haven't been able to get the refined product from the state-owned refineries. We haven't been able to get NNPC production up. We announced, for example, another 774 offices opening for farm mechanization. I mean, that's something that, again, I don't think is going to be successful. We've had so many programs, anchor borrowers, milk, border closures, et cetera, that ultimately have cost Nigerians a lot of our precious resources and not produced a result. And this announcement of the coordination committee, to me, as I said, is very disappointing because it said to me that this administration is continuing this type of ad hoc interventions that lead to not just no result, but a negative result. They impose extra costs on the economy, taking up people's valuable time, taking up valuable resources, and not addressing the fundamental issues. So it was a sad day when I was reading the headlines this morning.
I can imagine, but let's see how all of this plays out. I must thank you so much for your time. And of course, looking at the time range there in the United States, we thank you so much for joining the program. We appreciate this. We don't take it for granted. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Dr. Andrew Nevin, there, economist, joined us live from Dallas, United States of America. Well, coming up.